Hi guys, it's Michelle, and today's video is going to be another serial killer series. So this one's going to be a little bit different because we're only going to be talking about female serial killers. So by the way, if you hear like a noise, it's my camera focusing because I put it on autofocus because it was just like not working today. As a kid and like growing up, obviously like if you were to be scared of someone, you're more likely to be scared of like a man than a woman. I don't know if that's just me. I feel like obviously it's not. When you think of a serial killer, I feel like the first person you think of isn't going to be a woman because just men are more inherently like violent. That's just how it is. But that is not to say that women do not kill people, because they definitely do, and I found this super interesting and I asked you guys on Twitter if you guys wanted to see it, and the response was so overwhelming that you guys like wanted to see this video really badly. I don't know if it's because it's shocking to you guys as well. Not that a woman serial killer exists, just like, I don't know, it's just weird because like, I don't know, like I feel like if I saw someone in a dark alley and it was a man versus a woman, like I'd be more scared of the dude, you know? I don't know. Women just have a nurturing vibe, but that's because they're like literally like meant to be mothers. The first serial killer we're going to be talking about is Myra Hindley, and she is one of the most terrifying serial killers of all time. So Myra Hindley was born on July 23rd, 1942 in Manchester, England. But she was raised by her grandmother, but at the age of 15, one of her close friends actually drowned and died. This caused her to leave school and she ended up becoming Roman Catholic. In 1961, she met Ian Brady. Ian Brady was a store clerk, but he had just gotten out of prison when they met. She completely fell in love with him and would literally do anything for him, and together they ended up doing some of the most horrifying things. In July of 1963, they came up with plans to sexually assault and murder children. Their victims were only between the ages of 10 and 17 years old, so that's obviously extremely young and very sad. So basically how they would do it, and this is why it is also called the Moor murders, is because a lot of these murders or their bodies were like discovered on Saddleworth Moor in northern England. What's really creepy about this is that they would use Myra to lure her in, because I don't know if it's just you, but if I saw this lady, like I wouldn't think anything of it. Like I wouldn't see a woman and be like scared, although I would never go in a car with a stranger, but this was also a very different time. She would lure children in is to say that she needed help finding her glove on Saddleworth Moor. So they would trust Myra and she would introduce them to her boyfriend Ian. When they got to the moor, he would kill them and usually sexually abuse them as well. Their victims included Pauline Reid, John Kilbride, Keith Bennett, Leslie Ann Downey, and Edward Evans. So Myra claimed that she didn't have any part in the murder. She kind of just like helped him, I guess, lure these children in. And Brady actually claims that that was not true and that she participated in the assaults as well. Either way, it is super messed up and super disgusting and really creepy, so literally can't trust anyone. The next person we're going to talk about is one of the most famous female serial killers, Aileen Wuornos. She was born on February 29th, 1956 in Troy, Michigan. Like a lot of other serial killers or just killers in general, they usually do have some type of really messed up childhood that can lead to them doing these terrible things. Obviously, no childhood or no amount of anything should lead you to become a serial killer. That's obviously terrible. Aileen lived with her mother, Diane, and never met her father, Leo Dale Pittman, because he was incarcerated at the time of her birth. Her father was diagnosed with schizophrenia and was convicted of sex crimes against young children. Her father hung himself in prison on January 30th of 1969. When Aileen was only 4 years old, her and her brother Keith were actually abandoned by her mother, and they were left with their grandparents in 1960. At the age of only 11, Aileen began involving herself in sexual acts at school in exchange for cigarettes, drugs, and food, which is obviously super sad and terrible. It's also reported that she would engage in sexual acts with her brother Keith, but not only that, her grandfather would also abuse her physically and sexually as a kid. And at the age of 14 years old, she was actually impregnated by one of her grandfather's friends, who also abused her. She gave birth and that child was placed up for adoption, and around this time as well, her grandmother died of liver failure. When Aileen was 15 years old, she was thrown out of the house house by her grandfather, and in order to keep herself alive and support herself, she became a sex worker and lived in the woods near her old house. Years later, in 1989, is when Aileen began to become a serial killer. She killed her first victim in 1989, Richard Mallory, who she claimed raped her, and that is why she killed him in self-defense. So Mallory actually was a convicted rapist, so we definitely believe that this is a huge possibility that she was actually raped by this man. However, she went on to kill 6 more middle-aged men: David Spears, Charles Carskadden, Peter Symes, Troy Burress, Charles Humphreys, and Walter Gino Antonio. On March 31st, 1992, she actually pleaded guilty, saying, quote, "I wanted to confess to you that Richard Mallory did violently rape me, as I've told you, but these others did not. They only began to start to," end quote. So we can assume that yes, Richard Mallory did rape her, and she does claim that the others started to before she killed them. All of her victims she actually shot several times, and that is how they died. She actually did score a 32 out of 40 on a psychopathy checklist, which anything above a 25 is consistent diagnosis of psychopathy. So she was known to be crazy. She would say these outrageous things even when she was on death row. She was sentenced to the death penalty, and she was actually on death row for 10 years until she was executed on October 9th, 2002. What makes me think that she was actually psychopathic is that she kept saying over and over again that she would continue to kill people if she were alive, that she hated human life, that she hated everything, and she wanted to kill people. Obviously, she did have a freaking horrible childhood, like unimaginably horrible. She continuously kept saying that she would have done it all over again, and she would have continued to kill people if they would have let her out. And the creepiest thing that she said is that she would come back after she was executed. She was not scared to be executed. She was just chilling, and she was like, I'm gonna come back, like I'll be back. And that is a little bit terrifying. The next person we're going to be talking about is Beverly Allitt. She was honestly one of, like, this is one of the most terrifying things ever because there's not really any way to like avoid this. Beverly was born on October 4th, 1968 in England and had a relatively normal childhood growing up. She grew up with both of her parents and 2 sisters and a brother. She was always like a normal kid growing up. You know, just moody, but like as like a normal teenager would be. She became a state-enrolled nurse at the Grantham and Ketsavin Hospital in England, and this is where she began her killings in the children's ward in February of 1991. She would continuously administer large doses of insulin into these children, and that would end up killing them. It's believed that she also attacked them in other ways with the use of drugs, though police were not ever really completely sure of all of the deaths and how it happened. Victims included Liam Taylor, a 7-week-old baby, Timothy Hardwick, who was 11, Becky Phillip, who was 2 months old, and Claire Peck, who was 15 months old. And there were loads of other children that she attacked as well. However, these children did survive. All in all, she attacked 13 children and killed 4 of them over a 59-day period that she was working at this hospital. This is so creepy. She was literally a freaking nurse at a hospital. Someone that you're supposed to be able to trust, and they're just like, oh my god, it's so terrifying that they have, I mean, sometimes people are crazy and they have access to all of these drugs and they could just be telling you, oh, this is going to help you. Or if you're a baby, some of these children were literally babies at the time. It literally blows my mind. I think that's so disgusting, obviously, but it's also really, really scary to think that this could actually happen now. I mean, this was only in the 90s. It's really not that long ago. I can't even imagine. So Beverly was obviously sentenced to life in prison and remains in prison to this date. The last serial killer we're going to be talking about is Rosemary West, who was born on November 29th, 1953 in Devon, England. Why the hell do all these serial killers live in England? Like almost all of them. She began her life having a relatively normal childhood until her parents separated when she was a teenager. This is when things started to get really, really messed up for Rose. Honestly, she became very insane. Probably because her father was a paranoid schizophrenic who would often abuse her. When she was a kid, she would actually sexually abuse her little brother Graham, which is so sad and obviously really disgusting. Sadly, the abuse never stopped there because when she was 15 years old, she married a 28-year-old man named Fred West who had 2 children, Anne Marie, who was his own, and then he also took care of his stepdaughter, Charmaine. Rosemary regularly worked as a prostitute and her husband knew this and often would watch, and it got her into a lot of trouble, and she often also encouraged Fred to sexually abuse his daughter Anne Marie, which is so disgusting. She was only 8 years old at the time and Rosemary actually sexually abused her as well. Rose ended up giving birth to 8 children, which is insane to think because she was obviously a sexual abuser and also disgusting and a serial killer later on in life. She began murdering people in April of 1973 through August of 1979. So for years she was convicting these murders. She was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Her husband Fred West committed suicide on January the 1st, 1995. That one honestly creeps me out a lot because I just think it's so sick how like imagine being like born obviously like into a family like this, like that sexually abuses you. Like I could never imagine. That's so terrible and so sad. And it's disgusting and it's so weird to me because honestly when I was a kid I literally used to think that women couldn't kill people. I don't know why or what that thought was. It was honestly probably like a stupid thing I believe as kids because that's just really dumb. So that is it. If you guys liked this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Let me know in the comments if you thought the same way as me. It was just like never really, I don't know, like I knew women could be serial killers like as I got older obviously, but I always like associate it more with men, and it's because there are more male serial killers than there are women. But I think it's also interesting to look into women serial killers, and I think you guys do as well because you guys went crazy on Twitter asking me to do this video. So that is it. But also let me know in the comments if you want me to do a part 2 of this because there are honestly so many more, which is really creepy and surprising to me, but that's the case. So that is it. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram because I'm always posting really dope ass shit on there. Subscribe for new videos every single day, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye!
You'll never get mama right, like 2 ships passing in the night, in the night, in the night. Want the same thing when we lay, otherwise mine's a different way, it's a different way.